actually they're not together. They're either in very large buildings on different floors or different parts of the building. They're in the office, but it's not the same office as the person they need to work with. So they're working in a remote way anyway, just from a very expensive desk in a very expensive location in a city centre somewhere.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Paul from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Ricky from Thinking Focus. And today the question is, will a hybrid model for the workplace be as easy as it sounds?
I think that's a very topical, challenging question. So, because I don't know about you, but I've read so much stuff about hybrid working. So it's a really topical, big thing that has been caused by people working from home for a lot of organizations for the first time ever. People have been released from the office, mainly because I don't think we had a choice in reality.
More directive than consultative and a choice. But Stanford University is saying that actually 70% of organizations are actually planning right now for a hybrid model. But what would that actually look like, do you think?
Well, firstly, I think that let's be, and I may be being cynical here, but let's be really honest and go, I think a lot of organizations, a lot of managers have gone, people won't work if they work from home, which I kind of find surprising. But then I've been really lucky in my career because I've had two different careers, one in technology and now in psychology. And in both of those, I've done quite a lot of hybrid working. So I've worked from home some of the time and office some of the time.
Well, it's kind of hard for us because that's how we work, isn't it? We've operated this way since we started the business, and in many respects, I was working that way before. I know you kind of worked in the office a lot more, didn't you?
Yeah, but ironically for me, when we first met and I was in the office, that's the first job I've ever had that was in the office. That's the first time I've ever worked like that since I was 18 years old, in reality. I find some of these debates a little bit confusing because I've never known any different. Yeah, I had to learn how to work in an office in my 30s and 40s because that was the bit that was new to me. But the other bit I think that sits behind this is I think a lot of organizations are suddenly going, why do we have all this office space if people aren't actually, because I think sort of sitting behind this was a belief that if people weren't in the office, they wouldn't work. And a lot of people have gone home and work from home and are working just fine.
Yeah, they've proved they can. And actually, a lot of people, you take some of those working parents have probably really they've seen the real value of those types of people because they've been able to manage their work around their family and around their personal lives and actually been a lot more productive than being forced into a way of working that means I have to be in the office.
And I think also in a lot of large organizations, this kind of concept that, well, we need the people to be together is kind of a false dichotomy because actually they're not together. They're either in very large buildings on different floors or different parts of the building, or you think of some of the organizations we work with, they're in the office, but it's not the same office as the person they need to work with. So they're working in a remote way anyway, just from a very expensive desk in a very expensive location in a city centre somewhere.
But I guess there's, clearly there are some real benefits if they can make this hybrid model work. Dan Pink talks, for example, around, the autonomy means I'm more likely to embrace the fact that I have a choice and therefore that will lead to more productivity. In fact, actually, it probably make me more loyal because I think one of the things organizations are scared of is now people do have a choice that they can work from home. They might lose some of their key people, some of their key resources if they force them back into the office.
Yeah, and I think there's a kind of a weird thing that's going to happen in the next window in that most people, having gone through this experience of working from home, go, I really enjoyed this, and therefore I want to keep doing it. And I'm not sure if working from home in the pandemic is the first time you've ever done it, I'm not sure you've really experienced working from home. And that's a bit of a weird statement to say because you're going, well, I did work from home. But you've worked from home at a period in time where everybody was in the same boat as you.
Yeah, the conditions were very much, this is not optional. In order to keep working as a business, functioning as a business, we all have to work in a very different way.
Yeah, so there was a fairly good power balance. The reality is we were all struggling with the technology and we were all having to meet on Teams or Zoom or whatever it was that your organization uses. And so it was a little bit more level playing field. And my experience of hybrid working, either because I've worked from home or I've worked remotely on customer sites or I've worked in different countries to the organization I've worked for, is that, the group in the office operate and interact in a very different way to the group outside the office. And therefore, you end up with this kind of weird situation where it's not equal in terms of power. So, and let me give you an example of this, just from our own experience of when we've facilitated large groups. If we're facilitating a large group and you've got, 8 or 9 people in the room, and even if you've got the same amount of people remotely, those 8 or 9 people remotely aren't in a different room together. They're in different locations. So what you've got is a group of 8 or 9 and 8 or 9 individuals. And therefore the group will, in a coffee break, carry on talking over the coffee, or at lunchtime will carry on talking over lunch, or will have side conversations that can't really be picked up on a microphone. Because, if you face it, when we're in a room together, we're really good at tuning out bits of the conversation. We know, because of the directionality of the voice and how clever our ears are, that conversation's coming from the 2 o'clock position. That's coming from the 11 o'clock position. I'm more interested in the one at my 11 o'clock. I'll ignore the 2 o'clock. Can't do that on Zoom. It's all coming out the speaker on your laptop. It just gets a muddle.
Yeah, it's straight in your face type thing, isn't it? So I imagine that plays out, though, also in terms of when we're involved in, in meetings within the office. So even though I might dial into that meeting, there is still that meeting after the meeting where we might just, clarify certain points, or we might just agree how we're going to move that forward because we didn't want to take up airtime in the meeting.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm now out of that loop. I'm not either represented, I don't have a voice in that conversation, and actually I might miss out on some of the information that might be important to me.
Or worse still, and I've experienced this firsthand, and this was from when I was working overseas, that, I would be dialing into all the important meetings. And there were people who were basically losing an argument in the meeting, or not getting their point across in the way they wanted, or not winning the resources they needed, who would just stop arguing and then go and fight outside the meeting, knowing that I was in a different country and couldn't object.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was real politics being played out, and just using the advantage of being local to the manager to have the ear of the senior person, because they could, see them at the coffee machine, or, in the olden days, go out and stand outside and have a cigarette with them. And the home working person or the remote person doesn't have that advantage. So I think this power imbalance is the thing that concerns me the most. So on one side, you've got all the real benefits of hybrid working. And I totally agree with the Dan Pink argument that the autonomy gives you a lot of flexibility. It gives you a lot of empowerment. You just feel better about the way you're working because you feel in control of it.
But you also, with that, though, I imagine that helps to manage, some of the work-life boundaries. It helps us to manage stress levels because we're not in the thick of it. So we can manage our day a little bit differently, particularly when those stress levels are not all work-related. They could be the pressure of the children coming home from school, or, other things going on around you at home. You can start to be a bit more flexible around that, and just giving that kind of that choice, that flexibility in how you work actually means that we are able to de-stress in different ways than perhaps we can do when we're at the office, because those problems still exist at home, problems still exist at work.
I think it does depend on the type of person you are. There's been some research into how people manage work-life balance, which I don't really understand it well enough. So I'm going to go back to the bit I do understand. But it basically says that for most of us, we take on one of two styles in the way we manage these things. And the styles are known as the integrator style or the segregator style, I think it's called. So in one style, we really like to keep the things separate. And the other style, we kind of find a way of modeling it all together. So, I think I'm a bit of an integrator. I don't see work and life as being separate things. And therefore, hybrid working really works for me, because I can suddenly go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, I need to pop to the shops. It doesn't bother me, because I'm not going to stop at 5 o'clock either.
No, of course.
Yeah. And so I just kind of work out that these are a whole pile of things that fit very nicely together and how would I like to organize them. I'm married to somebody who's a segregator. So actually for her, she wants to know work starts here and ends there, and she doesn't want to have to do other things in between because that's work time. And then there's time after work to do other things. And so actually home working's a little bit harder because that sort of the phone ringing after the end of the day and work dragging into the evening and not having the clear division of leaving the office is a tougher thing. So again, I think hybrid working works really well for some people, might not work so well for other people because they might struggle with some of the downside that hybrid workers tend to extend their workday. They tend to start earlier and leave earlier. They tend to really struggle with the barriers between work and life.
Well, there's some kind of research emerging that you've got the working parents like the dynamic, the flexibility of being able to be at home when they need to be, and obviously in the office when they need to be. But then you've got perhaps, and I'm generalizing here, but you've got more of the younger generation who actually, they want to be in the thick of it. They want to be in the office. They like the buzz. They like the energy that comes from that. And of course, because they're probably living either alone or living in, shared accommodation, they've got a flatmate or whatever, actually need that energy that comes from being amongst other people. So they want to be in the office.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. Again, it gets down to personality. There's certain personality types that really want to be around other people, and offices are really conducive of that. But that doesn't mean you can't do hybrid working. It just means you need to think about how you're going to do it. So, I think back to I worked in a sales organization where everybody was home based in that organization, and this was 20 something years ago, so it was quite rare to be home based. But they provided the tech, and you could work from home. What we also then had was a lot more office-based meeting spaces. So there was lots more bookable rooms, lots more areas with hot desks that you could book. So it actually meant that when you did need to get people together, it was really easy. You didn't have to go, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to meet? Can we get 20 of us in that Starbucks? You just went online and went, right, we're going to that office because it's convenient and we're all going to meet and we've got a big room and we're going to sit and talk about this topic, and then there's some space to work for the rest of the day. So they thought about the implications of if you've got a group of people who are really disparate, who want to come together very quickly, how do we organize that? How do we do that? And I think the organizations that get that bit right, again, will get some of those benefits of going, I get the sociability and the buzz of being around people when I need it. And I also get the ability to go and shut myself away and get some work done.
Yeah, and I think that's always really interesting around how you come together and get stuff achieved and collaborate. Having the opportunity to come together, to meet, to share and collaborate on things and agree how you're going to move that forward can be really energizing in terms of moving projects forward. But if you come in and there's nowhere to do that, you might as well have been at home and done it on a Teams call.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge. I think my guess is, and I'm not an expert in this area at all, but my guess is the way we understand office space is radically going to change because of what's happened in the pandemic. Because we're less worried about people sat at a desk and turning up at 9 and leaving at 5, we're going to be more focused on, well, are they doing the work and are they driving the thing forward? That's going to free up some office space. And the temptation will be to get rid of it all and save costs. But I think we need to repurpose at least a portion of it to make it more conducive to how people operate and come together and work together, because that will be a really important part. And like most things you do in business, because there's no perfect answer, if we want the benefits of the upside, which is more empowered and motivated employees who are more in control of their life, that hybrid working offers us, then we're going to have to manage some of the downsides about how we meet, how we manage power, how we manage the politics of some people being remote and some people being in. Because if we can manage those bits, then actually it's quite an easy thing to do.
And I suppose that's quite going to be quite a challenge for people, for managers, for organizations to work through and navigate that. I mean, when you think about perhaps having, managers, for example, you end up with this availability bias. So people that are in and around me does that give me an advantage over the home, the person that works at home probably more than I do, for example. So I'm always in and around my boss. What does that mean in terms of promotion prospects? Does that give me a higher level of influence in terms of key projects? Like you said before, your example of you're dialing in from the other side of the world, literally, and therefore I'm just going to take that argument offline and I'm going to deal with it locally so that you can't be involved in that. Managers have got to adapt their style, I imagine, in terms of how they make everybody feel included in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I got asked a question at the start of the pandemic, quite a few times actually, by different customers that said, what's different about managing a remote workforce than to managing, a workforce that's sat at its desk? And I really struggled with it, because you go, well, is it different? And I think the answer I've come to is, if you're managing a group of people in front of you, it's a more forgiving management environment. You can get it wrong and adapt because you see you getting it wrong and you can react to it really quickly. If you're managing people that are remote, or more importantly, mixed, so you're getting some feedback from some people but not from others, then you have to be more disciplined in your management approach. You have to be better at it to make it work. Yeah,
and of course, now you're going to have hybrid. So you're going to have some people in, some people out, and that might not be on the same day. It might not be in the same, they might never actually collide in the office, because, my days are Monday, Tuesday, and your days are Thursday, Friday. And it might be we come in on the Wednesday together. It might be actually we don't, and so actually there's the blended style of management that works with both remote workers in the office or in the environment workers. And then there's how do we bring them both together to make sure we're all on the same page, if never the two shall meet type thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because, again, the temptation is to go, well, that's everybody. And I heard an organisation the other day talk about 60-40, 60% of the time in the office. And you go, well, actually, if people are all in 60% of the time in the office, the good news is there is a point in the week where everybody's in together.
Yes.
The bad news is you don't need a smaller office.
No, because you still got to house them all for one day.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of empty desks most of the time. So you suddenly start going, well, that, again, there's some practicalities of that are not going to work out. So look, for me, it's a classic example of, we are going to have to rethink the way we work to make hybrid working work. And if we can do that, then it's probably a really powerful thing, because there's some big upsides to it. If we can't do that, then we'll be, 2 years down the line, people will be talking about moving everybody back into the office.
Next time on The Question Is.
Communication about how we manage our work needs to be formalized and become part of the discipline of communication that we have with each other, to make sure that everybody's on the same page all of the time.
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organisation, go to www.thinkingfocus.com, where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.